Do you want us to go through and state our names so we can record that? Would you like that? Yes, no? No? Okay.
We've not done that.
Okay, in a long time. Okay, great. So what I would like to ask everyone, is to review and the minutes so that we can approve them from last month. This is, today is December 5th, 2022. I know, it's been a minute. It's really good to see everybody again. We haven't met since September, so if you can dig October. Okay, thank you. If you can dig back into your minds, into your brains, and remember that meeting and review these quickly so we can approve them, unless there's any edits or changes that are needed. We've got a great meeting today, so I'm excited to get going. Okay, then if I don't see any concerns, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Anyone against or abstain? Great. So the minutes have been approved. Now we're going to move on to the other exciting stuff. Let's talk about, very briefly, I think the financial update. Davey, anything to chime in on that?
No, it's just Bill. We had to move funds around to secure the final position of for an administrative position, but we are within budget and we're on budget.
Good to hear. Good to hear that things are moving around to bring in a position. Okay, then I'm going to move quickly into the new business and then anything else that everyone wants to talk about afterwards. Okay, let's just go in this order. So Mobile Diversity Seminar, that's Davey. We had one, and it was very good, from what I understand.
Yes. Yes, it was, and we plan on having another, I think, I'm sure Commissioner Holmes took part in some of it, and I'm trying to remember what else did. But yes, and we're having another one in December, and we will send out the date of that one to everyone, and if you're able, you can come out and be part of this one also.
And just for everyone's knowledge, it is literally mobile, so everyone's kind of going to locations. So I think that that's really powerful and pretty cool. And maybe if you haven't been to some of these places in Nashville, they're just like religious centers and different cultural and sort of centers of community in the town. It's a really awesome opportunity. I haven't been able to do it yet, but I don't know. I think it's much better than some sort of lecture or something like that. It's quite powerful. So when we have that next date,
yes,
we can send it out so that everybody can put it on their calendars and possibly join. You would probably just be driving around. So next thing is, for those of you that do not know, Barbara Garnlardi has left the commission, and there was a great celebration for her that was planned by the team, the commission, which was what I heard was incredible. I wasn't able to attend, but obviously Barbara was a really, important and powerful member of the MHRC team, so we were sad to see her go, but are very excited for what comes next for her, and I understand that there is efforts underway to be able to replace the responsibilities that she had. Davey, is there anything you want to add?
Yes, that not only was it rather quick, I think some of her absence, as you were relating to communication and things, are tied to that, of putting responsibilities and duties in other places. But we apparently sent out an email to the commissioners that didn't go out about the celebration. So we apologize for that, and even in the conversations prior to the meeting, I was trying to ensure that you have been getting the emails that we've been sending out since then. And yes, we are planning to hire for that position of community engagement person. In fact, we are already in the queue with Human Resources to have it posted. We're just waiting on them to post it, so we would hopefully have somebody in that spot pretty soon.
Do you want to do just an overview of the spots and where y'all are at with the various hiring?
We have a community engagement person, which would fill Barbara. We just hired Mr. Robles as the compliance officer, and we are hiring an administrative person. Our total number should be 6 when we're done, and I think that's a pretty significant increase over what the staffing has been historically, and so we're trying to do our best to build our bandwidth to do the work. Ashley here, I think most of you have already met her. She's our research person, and she's doing a great job, and she's filling in for the meeting logistics now. So everybody does a little bit of everything so we can try to get something done.
That is absolutely really exciting that in just a short amount of time, you've been able to secure a couple more spots for the office. So kudos to you, Director, because it's not even been 6 months. So I think that's great. Thank you, Ashley, for filling in on a bunch of stuff that maybe wasn't initially part of your purview as we transition into a bigger commission. Okay, so the stuff that I'm excited to talk about is, the things affecting our city right now. So none of this is new, and some of us have been around for some of these discussions for a while, particularly the LPR discussion. So we're going to start with the East Bank. We started with that last meeting, and I'm just going to walk you through my understanding of some of that, and then whatever the director can fill in, that would be really helpful. And some other commissions can also help fill in because they've been involved as well. So I would say, I'm going to start with sort of the present, which is there are several public meetings that council has created, or rather it's the committee, the East Bank Committee on the council has created to hear public comment. And I'm starting with that to say that is probably the most important place for any Nashvilleian to inject themselves into this process currently. There were 2 last week. One was on Tuesday night at Southeast Library. One was on Thursday night at in the North Precinct Police Station. And these are really important and powerful hearings. Basically, a handful of council members show up, and Bob Mendez, I think, is probably at all of them doing an initial presentation, which is pretty excellent, I would have to say, and I can walk through a little bit of what is significant in his presentation on sort of he does this great overview of, let's say your toilet leaks and you have 3 options: get it fixed, maybe renovate the bathroom, just blow out the whole area of the house and get maybe add a whole new part of the house, or rebuild the house. So he kind of does that version of it. And so he does the small, medium, large version of going about this. And it's very helpful in terms of the finances for all and where he gets the numbers from, because some of it is quite opaque. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But just to say, the public meetings are happening. Tomorrow is December 7th is Bellevue Wednesday. I'm going ahead of myself. They start at 6 p.m. And I'm missing whatever else is left. I know there's probably 2 more beyond that. So these are really powerful. One, because you get a feel for the community, what's going on in Nashville, what's going on in that neighborhood particularly. 2, you get to voice your own concern, which is really key. And as I've engaged with council members, and I encourage you all to as well. I know when we first got together this summer as a new council, as a new commission, the director said, get in touch with your council members, get to know them, get coffee with them. And I thought that was a great recommendation. And now as I engage with them, I've spoken to Angie Henderson and Delisha Porterfield. The latter was kind of accidental. And just understanding where they're standing and sharing what my concerns are. I think think those are two main ways that we can really have an impact on this decision. It's moving fast, and they have asked, both of them have asked, when I have asked them about their vote, they have asked me to please go and speak at the public comment meetings. So they are really looking to citizens to speak up at this venue. And so back to Mendez's presentation, which is great, and it's on. There's a whole East Bank committee section at Nashville.gov, which has all the documentation, even the old contract from 30 years ago, 30, whatever, how many years ago, everything. And so he walks you through even the legalese of what does it mean to keep a stadium in excellent condition, or, industry standards, and what's defined, what's not defined. They're nodding their heads because they were there with me. So there are other council members and other leaders there. And then Bob, Council Member Mendez walks us through. In 2017, the estimate was about $300 million to renovate, which is significant. That was 5 years ago, but it was about $300 million to renovate. And then, as we know, in the spring, that number jumped to about 1.8 or something like that. If I'm getting this off my memory. And then now the presentation is 2.2 for just a whole new thing. So he walks you, So he walks you through all of that. And nobody knows everything because not all of it's revealed. We don't have like a line item budget for that $2.2 billion that's being asked, and then sources of financing. We did go over this last time we were in the meeting, but just to remind you, sources of financing are about $500 million from the state. That state commitment is not going to be given to us if we renovate, which is also really important. Your legislators do not want a renovation. They want a Superdome. The second thing that will not be given to us if we renovate is the 1% increase in hotel tax. The 1% increase in hotel tax was voted on by the legislators to fund this and will not be given if we decide to renovate. So we can't use it for transportation or all the other things that one might find us needing. And then the final thing, so that's the $500 million there. There's the 1% hotel tax that I spoke about. There's all the that happens inside the stadium. The taxing that happens there goes to fund the stadium. And then there's a 130 acre area around the stadium, and all the income from there should go to fund the stadium as well. That could be controversial, obviously, because there's going to be homes there, there's going to be retail there. So actually, that could be tax revenue that goes to other things and not the stadium. So what's that toss up about? That also needs to be developed, and the question is like, how much does it cost to develop that area, and who's paying for that? So just kind of trying to work through the notion and the messaging that's out there right now, particularly for those that are very pro the Superdome rebuild, which is this pays for itself. So really working through that's not actually true once you break it down. Again, there was a long line of folks that stood up and got time out of their day. It was pretty remarkable. It's the Nashville you know and love that really stood up all the way from 6 to however long the meeting was to really express their concerns or support. So I think it's really important. Yes, Davey?
Yeah, you left out the $760 million in general obligation bonds. The city has a bond rating and a bond limit, and a significant portion of this financing will be in $760 million in general obligation bonds, which have a lot to do with how much we can borrow for other capital improvements and other things.
Excellent point. And there was another commission member here. I don't know if you want to chime in on anything.
Sure. The stadium needs to be, something has to be done. So they've got a decision to make one way or the other. But either way, a lot of money is going to be spent either way. And if you're going to spend that much money, it gets to a point where it's like, well, why not just build a new stadium? However, I don't think they're rushing it through a little bit. It felt like they were rushing it through. and it's about balance, and I don't think they have balance between the community and what they're trying to achieve with the new stadium. 80% to 90% of everyone that spoke was not in favor of this stadium. There was a very small percentage of people that were there in favor of the stadium. And I didn't expect it to be that lopsided, but when people are upset about something, you're going to hear from them about it. But when people are okay with something, generally they don't speak up or feel the need to speak up. So there's always going to be more people that are there that are against it probably than for it. But it was very powerful to listen to people hear why they thought we did not need a new stadium. And it made a lot of sense what they were saying. And that's where I think the balance comes in. Well, it's not a balanced approach from my point of view at this point. And they need to slow down probably the entire process and get that balance. So that
General theme for why they didn't want the stadium?
People did not like using resources. They didn't like using community resources to continue to widen the income disparity in our city. It was really apparent. This stadium is for the haves, and it's a have and have-nots sort of tug of war, if you ask me, because people at the hearing probably couldn't even afford a ticket to a Titans game. So the stadium, from the point of view of the people that were against it, was the stadium is for the haves, the people in Nashville that have the means to attend a Titans game, and the people who are the have-nots are it's at their expense, essentially, the stadium getting built. So that was the general theme of the comments that were being made.
And I'll just add, did you have a comment? Okay. I'll just add, it's not so 80-90% at the other meetings. The Southeast meeting was 50-50. So it was really remarkable that in the North Nashville precinct, I think that there was such an outcry in that direction. And it's a great question as to what were people saying. The comments were very well thought out, honestly. They were not very reactionary. Our people had statistics and data and personal experiences with other stadiums and it was pretty remarkable. But yeah, I would say largely it's about people were expressing their needs as Nashvillians and how this felt like kind of a blatant slap in the face given the needs that we currently have as a city, whether it was education, whether it was jobs, whether it was transportation, and how the stadium didn't actually change anyone's quality of life or sustainable living at all, and so therefore just seemed like kind of this gross divergence or distraction. Also, I don't know if you guys have seen the mock-ups or the drawings, but the thing is quite luxurious. It's very big, and it's got like 6 bars and a 4-story bar and lots of extra things. There's a whole village, and so it was like, and the Titans are sort of saying, like, this is something that you guys can use outside of the 11 games a year. And then everyone's like, but how do we benefit as a city from all this? Because as the data has shown, economists have shown, it's a displacement of where your entertainment dollars go. It's not a gross increase to anyone's sort of livelihoods. So some of those questions, if you see the drawings, it's pretty remarkable. That was a big question for me, is like, who owned those bars? Who works at those bars? How much do they make? The wages inside the stadium right now are nothing, I think, that I've seen above $15 to $18 an hour. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
No worries. I was just looking at the data from the actual presentation. Yeah. And I'm seeing here that the Metro's full-term obligation is $1.839 billion, and that the cost of construction is going to be $1.9 to $2.2 billion. So I'm just curious here, as a practical, maybe it's the nurse coming out of me, where is that extra money coming from, and where is it, and what is our role in this exactly? What are we hopeful to accomplish in this process of representing the people?
Great question. I think that it's The 1.8 is even controversial because a third party was hired to verify that that's actually true, but that third party, it seems, has basically just, in some ways, rubber stamped what the Titans said they needed. So there isn't, in some ways, there's not really a third party assessment to say, if we had to fix this toilet today and just have a new toilet, just the basic, go to Home Depot and get it, how much does that thing cost? And so that's why Mendez actually went back to 2017 and looked at that number and said, well, y'all said it was 300 back in 2017, so why is it now 1.8? And there is I believe there is a request for a proper third-party assessment of that actual number. That has just been sort of presented. And then, so that extra is what this more complicated breakdown is that we went through, about the $500 million from the state, the $840 from the Titans, $780 from the city, and then the city's getting that from this increase in tax and this and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like 2.2 is your bathroom looks better than the rest of your house type of thing. 300 is like you got your basic Home Depot toilet in there that you put in yourself. And then I think he said, I'm forgetting what this is, but it was about 800 for some middle of the road version of it. And that's kind of how he's been presenting it. But we don't have, because we haven't gotten that third party review of it that we know and believe, those are kind of estimates. And so in terms of your question, what's the point? They're going to vote on it. And what feels fast, like the commissioner was saying, what feels fast to a lot of people is that vote's coming upon us. I'm not sure exactly when it is, and that can be pushed back, but they're going to vote on it. And so the question is, I think there's a bunch of creative responses if they're hearing from public that they're unsure or they want more or whatever, that we could get more before this decision is made for the city. Yes, was that you? Oh, I thought so. Yes, Kurt.
We drive that third party.
I think council is requesting that. Do you know the update on that? Yeah.
But I think back to what I think Dr. Charlton's getting at is as it relates to the commission. And I would answer that as it relates to the commission as to what our mission is. You get to make comments on things that fit within that, to where whether it makes a difference or not, your support or lack thereof is a prerogative that you possess. And so I think that's more to the discussion here. I know for some, and for me, the political will that so easily puts together $2.1 billion, but then we'll release $760 million in general obligation bonds, but then want to act like we need to have a parade on the street when we give $50 million to affordable housing. I liken it to a car that you hear the valves ticking and you keep driving it, and then you start it again, a little smoke comes out the back and you keep driving it, and at some point when the engine locks up, your lack of maintenance, historical maintenance, increases your cost of repair. So for me, I think it is a MHRC issue that if you all were to have a consensus either way, I would hope it would be on the side of ensuring that this is best for the city of Nashville. As we look at how dollars are spent and what our mission is, it seems as though I'm not so sure that there's the proper allocation of those dollars toward people's health and safety, people's general welfare. It's known that folk are being priced out of the city, and even as they continue through this process, even at this point, the council has deferred the resolution to basically, the resolution really has, it's really just a cursory, okay, keep moving with it. Well, they've even deferred that. They deferred it for 30 days about 2 weeks ago. So they didn't sign off immediately on, we're trying to move forward with this. Even in the way the funds are being put together, again, caused me pause. And so again, as we've tried to compile and make available to you all of the data, because as I've shared, it's my hope that there could be some statement. If it is, then it is. If it's not, but even in the way the tax is set, the state did not just volunteer this money. The city asked for the money, and the city asked for the money the way it was given. So it's not that we're getting money that we can't use for anything else. We ask for money only to be used for something, which is two totally different things for me. The allocation of the bonds, there are other cities that are using general obligation bonds to try to catch up in the area of affordable housing. So there's many reasons. I could go on forever of why I think it's something that the MHRC should at least consider.
I just wanted to note really quickly that it seems to me a trap that those funds aren't available if we don't do the new construction. It seems to me a setup for us to have to be forced to make a decision. I just wanted to note that.
Thank you for that. There has been that kind of relationship with the broader legislator, I think, on for instance, the clauses that prevent us from.
And just for the record, discussion in one of the meetings were held about the jobs thing that somebody said earlier. Yeah. And the question was asked specifically about Metro went to a $15 an hour living wage during the last budget process, and it was asked, would that even apply to the vendors at the stadium? And it's no, because they're contractors. So these are part-time doo-doo jobs anyway. So the whole help in that aspect, I think, is very limited. And one last thing on that, and I'm done with it, is the idea of the economic impact. You already have a stadium that's there. So there's this known economic impact that is happening. You're replacing it with another stadium. Except for you can get WWE here now or something. What additional economic impact? Which none of this can be answered in here's a report, here's a statement. These are just words that are being said. Personally, I think it benefits the NFL. And I just feel a certain way about people struggling to live every day. And the NFL gets a place in front of everybody in the line.
Yeah, that came up, and there, some of the people that were pro the stadium said, brown and black folks will get priority as vendors or workers on the stadium and after, and the real question is just, is that at all something that's sustainable and sustaining? And most of the answer is no in terms of the hourly wage and the longevity of the job. The other big thing is just, you'll see, it feels kind of like, it feels like a very strange prioritization, because you'll see, like in the Tennessean, toll roads being suggested because of increased congestion on all roads, and then you'll say deal locked in for stadium for $2.2 billion, and you're just wondering, like, wait, we're going to pay for tolls and we're going to pay for the stadium, and what's paying for our livelihoods and for us to thrive in the city? During the hearing I was at, one woman stood up and said, I can't live here anymore, and this time next year I will not be living in Nashville anymore, after she made her statement. So just a very active demonstration of that notion of being pushed out of the city, and many that were there, I think, felt that. And as I've spoken to people that are really into football and really into Titans, my nephews love it. They just say this is one of the most dilapidated stadiums in the country, and there's no doubt about that. If that's the truth, it's just that which version of the fix do we want to, as a city, commit to, and what does that say about our values and how we see our, taking care of the people that live here. In 10 years, we can look around and wonder how many people that were in that room will still be living in Nashville with a decision like this.
I just had one more quick question.
Yeah.
Do we have an estimate of how many will be displaced in their homes from this project? The new construction.
That's what hasn't been done from what I can tell.
Well, basically, there are no people living on that part of the East Bank now. So
Right.
there would basically be no displacement. But Metro also owns 130 acres of the site that is part of the larger East Bank project. And there's been talk of affordable housing, but no exact numbers. There's been talk of things, but no exact numbers. And I would hope that the city and others concerned would want exact numbers before they approve something. After 25 years, there is a contractual requirement that Metro has, but everything is negotiable. But there doesn't seem to be one of the options to negotiate where they are, because a real situation is the NFL already knows what it would cost for them to relocate. So it's not that we could not negotiate. It just appears that this train is moving awful fast.
And on that point of developing that area, it takes developers to develop that area, and it takes financing to develop that area. And one of the concerns is that as that starts to happen, the companies and for-profit entities that agree to build the road or build a stoplight, or, well, not a stoplight, but, sewer or whatever, just say, we have no profit margin if we put affordable housing into these units that we're building, which is what they say now. This is not sustaining for us as a business if we put 10% of the housing as affordable. So yes, if you want me to build that road and that sidewalk and that sewer or whatever, then I'm going to have to build some pretty nice, rises that, again, in my mind, is a displacement that we're not accounting for currently. Do you see what I'm saying? And it could raise our standard of living costs and things like that, which is a cost, like an opportunity cost almost, or a hidden cost that isn't being in the estimate. And there are ways to estimate this. It hasn't been done because the estimations are coming from those that want the project. So I think that that's really important to think about it as we're critically looking at it, is to get this done. Yes, there's all these beautiful ways you could do it, but to get it done, there's going to be an argument of we can't afford it unless we make it real high end. Because there's nothing in that area. There's no infrastructure in that area at all. So, and then again, from that 130 acres, all the revenue, from what I understand, will go to paying for the stadium. And I don't know for how long. And that's another really important just discussion, is what happens when there's a surplus. So let's say you've paid what you need to pay out to the stadium. What happens to the surplus? And some council members are working on passing something that says the surplus comes back to Nashville and doesn't keep going into the stadium. It's complex, and we need time to, like it was said, we need time to really get into it. So that is just the tip of the iceberg. Bob Mendez and other folks are available for conversations and discussions around this. So, and then yes, I think that that's a really good point that Davey made. Does the commission want to make a statement? I'm happy to draft something. We can joint draft something, whatever it is, to just put our voice out there as a commission on this issue. It is something that affects the personal dignity, well-being, livelihoods of Nashvillians. So if there is an interest in that, we can have a motion to draft up a statement and put that out publicly. Yes.
since you've been very involved with this, and I'm asking you, and I'm also asking Davey, since this seems to be on a fast track to getting it where people want it to be, what will be the appropriate timeline to really weigh in on this and include everyone versus the developers have already, basically gotten their cut. So what would be a reasonable timeline, in your opinion, based on the meetings that you have attended and what you have attended, for us to have this real discussion in the community?
Right now.
Well, and I would even say, as we sent you all of the information that we've been able to gather, particularly the package that the council, through Bob Mendez, has been maintaining, for you to actually read it yourselves and become informed. I personally think you could deliberate around around making a statement the first of the year, because so that you can have time to look at it. But yeah, I think statements do need to be made rather quickly, but I think you got another 4 or 6 weeks that you could use to be more thorough. And again, we've tried to send you everything that we can find on it. And again, as you read through it, there's very little specificity in it right now. And that's the issue for me, is that the devil is in the details. That's my 2 cents, Commissioner Holmes.
I'm basically asking, and thank you for that, but I'm asking, this seemed like we woke up one day and we had an East Bank discussion.
Right.
Versus this has been very fast. What I'm saying, as far as the community in general, some of these things take a year to 2 years to come, to be brought into where we are now. There's been a lot of talk behind the scenes, and then now it's just being made aware to us, because there's been a lot done.
Yeah.
So I'm asking, in that vein, what do you think would be a great timeline for us as a community and as Davidson County residents, for us to have this top to bottom review,
Sure,
including the public in this?
So that's an excellent question, and I can answer just partially. What I understand is that the negotiations, the backroom negotiations, had been going on for about 2 years, and then they came to an understanding and got what they needed in terms of the financing and all that locked down, and then presented it to the public. So that's why you get that feeling of, whoa, all this, when did this happen? When did that get locked down? And then it's kind of like, well, please go ahead and vote and let's move on. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of that vibe of like, we sorted it all out. Titans are happy. State is happy. City is happy. Now please vote. And then the city's saying, wait a second, we didn't, can we slow this down a little? And I think the powers that be that have been working on it for quite some time, for maybe 2 years, are like, what do we need to slow down? We figured it all out. That's the sense I'm getting. And then so now this period of public comment, and we can share it's just like a list of like 6 meetings, is the place where it's like, what's everybody wanting to slow down? We don't understand what the problem is, for those that negotiated the deal. And so that's what's really important right now. Unfortunately, we're having to become PhD students a little bit and get into the economics of it, and read up and really, I really commend some of our council members that have really worked hard to make this make sense to us as citizens and as leaders. And so that's what they've been working on, is like, let me present what I've gotten from the city, what I've gotten from the mayor, let me present it to the people so we can, and they have bought us some time with these meetings and things like that. So in some ways, I think they would say the time is right now as the public comment is happening. And I think Davey's right. The public comment time is probably, it is a tough time. It's December, but also January. And also, I just want to add one thing. That meeting that I was at Thursday is on YouTube in full. So if you don't have time to go, Bob Mendez walks you through the whole presentation on that. And I think he does a great job. So you can just go and watch that. Go ahead, Ben, sorry.
So My understanding is that the greatest timeline is going to be when the council votes on these matters, when these bills go through. So that's what we're reacting to. And the community meetings are due process by which the council will listen to the public, and then they will go ahead and schedule the meetings and decide. So I think our reaction, our comment to this is crucial in short time. And we have to do our homework. And I wanted to ask, are the community meetings recorded and online as well?
Yes.
So
For the East Bank.
for the East Bank. So that information is there. And my other question is, has there been a number thrown around as to the valuation of the Titans once the stadium is built? Because typically, when a professional sports team has a new stadium, a new facility, like the Golden State Warriors, the value of the team increases tremendously. And I'd be curious to know if we have that number.
Somewhere in those documents that we sent out, there's
So that would be interesting.
Well, it's a pre-stadium valuation that says that they are worth $3.5, I believe, billion
Right.
as a team. So,
As a team, but like before and after, right? You know, there is a number that is, the sports world professionals can calculate that number. They can estimate that number. My other concern is that this is a question really, I think, Chairperson Abu-Fazi said this is an issue of priorities. The stadium is, besides all the rhetoric and the math and the economics that I don't understand fully, that haven't been revealed, the priorities are pretty simple. The stadium does not house people. It does not feed people because it doesn't pay people well. It does not educate people. It does not provide better health care. You can argue that 11 football games a year provides mental health in the promotion of tailgating, but that does induce a hangover. So to me, the priorities are pretty straightforward, and I'd like for us to think about that as the city grows, and it is becoming a divided city. So that's one issue. The other issue is actually the NFL itself. A league, a sports league, a powerful sports league that has a history of racism and domestic abuse that it cannot handle adequately. And I want us in the city to think about the priorities by which we work and increase the valuation of a team, an entity that represents Nashville vis-a-vis the NFL. I am a sports fan through and through, but there are ways to do sports and there are ways not to do sports professionally. And I think it's really important that we understand what this means economically in terms of our priorities as a society and as a city, and through the league with which we are trying to do business with. So I think that as a commission, we should do our homework, make a statement either way, and go from there. According to the timeline that would be in sync with what the commission is, what the council is doing. So if we can stay atop and abreast of that timeline with all the deferrals and all the updates, that would be spectacular.
I'm just pulling up the meeting timeline here really quickly just to let you guys know. One thing that came up, okay, so November 21st was the first meeting. That was East Nashville. November 28th was Southeast. December 1st is North Nashville. December 7th, like I said, is Bellevue. And December 12th is the last one in Hermitage. So as you know, like this wraps up December 12th. So if we're going to make a statement, I know we're going into the holidays and Lord knows it's way too hectic right now, but happy to draft something up, circulate it, get comments, and maybe aim for the beginning of the year to get it out to the council who would need to hear it most, because they're the ones deciding. Yes.
So with the statement and understanding that you're willing to draft or make the initial draft and circulate it, would we be able to comment on it through email, or would we have to debate it in this forum? I think that would probably limit us with how we would proceed.
To the extent legal opinion would be before it's adopted as an official statement of you as a collective, you would have to vote to approve it being presented. As far as you wanting to provide your comments, technically it should come from staff to you and you comment back to staff, but I also have to caution you, do not let your comments go into the area where you're, prior to an open meeting, deliberating whether or not you're going to support that position or not. You cannot even deliberate on a matter except in this open meeting. You can receive information, but you cannot deliberate.
Yeah, so I think what it would be is Davey would send it out, and individually you guys would say, instead of the word green, I want the word red or whatever it is. No? No edits?
You would question,
Okay.
why is the word green instead of red used here? But you don't express your opinion that you prefer red to green. If I've given you a lawyerly way.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one that understands that, I think.
That's why you should.
Well, maybe that's why you ought to lead this up.
It wasn't an offer to lead it up. It was just saying I understand what he's saying.
He gave you a softball, but to the extent that you express your opinion, you favor one word over another or one position over another, that's deliberating. That's what you're to do here in the open meeting. However, if you have a question of staff as to why is green being chosen as the preferred background for delivering the message, you're just receiving information then without telling the world or even staff why you might prefer a different color or even want a different color. You're just asking a question. Why did you choose it?
Well, let me ask you this. If Davey drafted the statement and then shared it with commissioners, then could commissioners comment on his statement that he drafted?
Not to the extent it's ultimately going to, again, let's carefully define what the word comment means. Again, you can question why he selected certain things in it, and is there data to support it, or things like that. But when you are, even with staff, when you're expressing your opinions and thoughts as to why you would prefer a decision to be made or a different choice or selection to be made, that's part of the deliberative process that has to take place when you're all collectively meeting in open.
So what I suggest, do you guys remember when Erwin had a statement and we all motioned for the approval? What I suggest is we come with the statement and we discuss it in the meeting.
There's a possibility, too, that we could hold publicly noticed executive meetings, and all commissioners are able to come to those meetings.
It's also called a special call meeting at the pleasure of the chair. The question is, it requires 7 days or 5 business days notice, and then you all can come.
We can do that.
And conduct business at it. Still have to have a quorum. And the purpose of that meeting is limited to specific notice. When you're at your regular meeting like you are here today, you have a little leeway to even stray from a specific item on the agenda. You can bring new matters because everyone in the world will know it's your regular meeting. At a special meeting, you have to strictly abide by the notice.
What about the executive committee meeting that's still publicly noticed?
Well,
then the only reason I bring that up as a bit different from the specially called meeting is that it wouldn't require a quorum.
Okay, I don't know if this, I'd have to research and give you an opinion, though, that this may fall within the authority of the executive committee, but I haven't explored to see what its authority is. Generally, they can act in some matters in the absence of the full body, subject to the full body coming back at its meeting and either accepting or rejecting what the committee did. But there usually are delegated duties to the executive committee, and I don't know if this body has to grant permission for that or not. So let me get back to you on an opinion about how we might can steer it that way. You can only
and I guess my concern primarily is the requirement of a quorum. People work and depend on the time and all of that, that without having the burden of having a quorum where there can be deliberation.
Couldn't we vote to give the executive committee the ability to decide on the statement?
I like that question.
Again, I don't have all the materials here with me.
I think that's what we've done in the past.
Now, I don't know what the purpose of your executive committee is as defined within structural creation. But it is limited to what it expressly states either within your bylaws or what provided in the charter.
Yeah, I mean, we could do it where the executive committee drafts it and comes up with it and presents it to the full committee for a vote.
Well, if you do that, see, then again, it allows you to have an executive committee meeting where any of the commissioners can
Yeah.
come to,
Yeah.
and you can make the decision about red or green.
And it may not need to go through your executive committee. You might could appoint an ad hoc committee
Yeah.
for the specific purpose
Of creating a
developing
statement.
position statement to be presented to the Metro Human Relations Commission at either its next meeting or at a special call meeting to deliberate whether delivered as written or modified.
So just looking at the bylaws, which were included with my packet when we joined the commission, which I assume would be the standing bylaws, it says that the executive committee can either act on behalf of the commission in an emergency situation between meetings, or can act for the commission when specifically authorized by the commission.
That was what I alluded to.
Right.
This wouldn't, I didn't delve into emergency because I don't know if this would fall. But on the delegated authority. So if you want to delegate it or form an ad hoc committee.
Yeah, we've done that before.
There was a mention of quorum. The executive committee itself, though, would need a quorum, just not a quorum of the full body in order to conduct business.
Well, it's 4 of them. 5, I'm sorry. 5.
Right, but I'm saying that 3 of the 5 would have to be present for the committee to conduct business. It still would have to have a quorum.
Okay.
So would the commission like to make a motion for the executive committee to meet and create a statement on the issue of the East Bank?
I will.
Okay, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry. The executive committee is going to draft a statement for the group
Yeah. Yes.
with input from the group or from the executive committee?
You can come to the meeting.
Okay.
And put in your 2 cents at that meeting.
Okay.
It's so that we don't have to wait for the next meeting, and we can do that a little bit more quickly. So anyone can join and put in whatever comments and thoughts they have.
And in the moment, the rush is basically to get something ready before January when this could potentially get voted on. We could
Right.
get later in the month and still have this executive committee, get ahead of it, but still be able to bring it to our next normal meeting, right?
After the executive committee meets on it?
I'm just saying the whole vote,
Right.
council on this could still get punted either way, but we would be ahead of the game if we at least had the executive committee have something
Yeah.
put together.
And they have it in their inbox when they come back from the holidays, basically, or earlier. So, I mean,
I would motion for that.
okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Did you want to say something?
Can you repeat what the motion is exactly?
The motion is for the executive committee to meet and draft a statement on behalf of MHRC on the East Bank.
That would then be approved by the full commission, or?
I believe we would approve, yes, okay.
I was about to say that's what my question
Can we do
was.
that?
Was why,
I recommend you reword the motion if the intent is what you're suggesting and what I think his question is directed to.
Okay, so y'all want to
You can
vote on
draft it for presentation back to the full
Okay, that's fine.
commission.
Okay.
But if you draft it on behalf of the full commission, that sounds like without their ability to finally review and finally vote on it, the committee's version would go to council.
So then, so the motion is for the executive committee to meet, create a statement that the full commission would review and vote on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion for that. We have a second?
Yes.
Great. Any against or abstain? All right, then that motion so moves. Okay, fabulous. Thanks, everyone. The next discussion is the LPR discussion. I am going to tee this up and then hand it over to our director because so we have been, several of us, not many of us, but several of us that have been on the commission for a while have been kind of looking at this for a while. I would say almost 2+ years. We invited the first sponsor of the bill of license plate readers, Joy Stiles, to a meeting to speak with us about it, and she heard many of our concerns about what it does to disenfranchised groups, to Black and brown folks, to anyone that is going to be sort of negatively affected by this policy, and then she went back and I think eventually dropped it, but others have sponsored and brought forth new ordinances of similar language. And so I'm going to let Davey bring us up to speed. I think there's been at least 2 more since that one. So I don't know which one we're dealing with now.
In some iteration, it has failed 3 times. And the last time was this bill that the beginning of what this bill is for a 6-month pilot. We sent you all of that information too, as it relates to this bill, and the language in here outlines what it is. It's to grant an agreement with a private entity to acquire, share, otherwise use surveillance technology and install surveillance technology onto and within the public right-of-way. But it goes on down to state that Section 13-8008 of the Metro Code of Laws states the approval by the Metro Council for any action set forth in subsection blah, blah, above shall be granted only upon the determination that the benefits to the citizens and residents of Nashville and Davidson County outweigh the cost, that the proposal will safeguard civil liberties and civil rights, and that in the judgment of the Metropolitan Council, no alternative with a lesser economic cost or impact upon civil rights or civil liberties would be effective. And so I use that to say that we've been involved with this debate back and forth for about 3 years now. And part of the concern is the lack of oversight with the Metropolitan Police Department. The fact that community policing is really being, is the police policing the community. There have not been initiatives that seek to gain greater accountability or transparency, yet they continue to get 2 new helicopters, keep bringing up license plate readers, blah, blah, blah. So from that standpoint, we already know the disproportionateness that policing does in Black, brown, and poor communities. And we've had several high-profile incidents, particularly out of Mount Juliet, where individuals were wrongly identified that just so happened to be Black. One was a school teacher with her kids that was made to get out on the side of the interstate and lay down in the middle of the interstate because she was erroneously picked out by the license plate readers. Now, what governments typically do is they're going to measure the benefits versus the negativity. Is one good enough? Except if that one is your wife or your sister or something. I mean, how many is okay? What is your tolerance level for this when the claims are that it will reduce crime? Our ACE research person here has not been able to find any research of any credibility that would support that. Ashley, you got anything to say about that piece?
I would just say I think it's mixed, randomized control studies that are using pretty rigorous research methodologies that show just inconcurrent information. And sort of the other thing that I would add is that many of the groups that we as a commission, the organizations that y'all represent, the communities that you work with, have really been trying to shine a light on the risks that are happening in the streets and the communities every day. And so I think I was hoping maybe somebody from Turk would be here. I know that they're not, because I think of them often as one of the groups that's speaking out about some of those civil liberties that this public hearing tomorrow has to show that adequate sort of safeguards are put in place for those. And the reason that this public hearing has to happen tomorrow is that there was legislation passed a few years ago that require any time that we really increase surveillance at the level that this is proposing to do, this extra step has to be done. And this is the first time as a city that we have met the threshold of having to do that extra public hearing to make sure that people are being protected in this. So it's really sort of stepping into that extra surveillance area that we have not been before.
And the legislation, to me, is a tad bit disingenuous, and that it's asking for a 6-month pilot, which, again, it's like, just let me in the house for a minute. Just let me get in the house. And that once we get in the house, it's a lot easier to stay in the house, because if I get any mail there, you can't just put me out. And so, again, it gets down to what is the community requiring from MMPD for transparency and accountability. This commission held 4 meetings regarding reimagining public safety. Many of the issues that were brought up were reasonable and logical that have yet to be adopted by the Metropolitan Police Department. But yet and still, all of their funding requests get met, and they continue to have their own data show a disproportionateness of impact and effect of their policing on Black and brown and poor communities. So if you get these license plate readers and they don't do as they're projected, the data already tells you where it's going to show up at. If you're not making them accountable and transparent now, what do you expect when you get LPRs? They're not going to be accountable and transparent then. So it's been in the past that the commission's position was not in favor of the LPR, but that was with a different group of commissioners. And so again, that falls to you all of where you all are on that, and that tomorrow at the public hearing, there'll be folks there to speak. And I guess I'll ask my question probably to Derek or somebody. I plan on going and speaking, and I just need to know whether I'm speaking on behalf of the commission or Davy Tucker that lives at 610 Fatherland Street, 37206. Is that kind of a...
My advice would always be speak as David Tucker that lives at...
Okay. Well, I don't know, Derek, if I should always speak as Davy Tucker, who lives at 37206.
Also, don't.
I'm saying when you go as a concerned citizen and voter, you need to carry your...
Yeah, but I also think if the commission, again, as it relates to the subject of the East Bank, there again is something that you also have the authority to weigh in on. Again, as it relates to the...
They were to vote to authorize you to go and speak. That's different. I thought you were just saying you were going and you wanted to know whether you should, from a legal perspective, go in your individual capacity or in your capacity as the executive director of MHRC.
Okay, yeah, I kind of said that, but I think they kind of got my gist of what I actually meant. But again, I think this is another situation that for you, even as I said earlier when we first got together, when we first met, is that your relationships on this commission and your relationship with others in the community, the council, the mayor, the mayor's office is very, very important far as not only joining the voice of civic discourse, but also becoming a way to either push it or pull it. And so you don't do that if you don't ever do that. And so that, again, rests with you of where you are with this. But as the data and everything suggests to me, it's not so much about the LPRs, it's my lack of confidence of the integrous deployment of it by the Metropolitan Davidson County Police Department.
I'll just add, Ashley just spoke to the studies that have been done. If you just Google LPRs, a bunch of stuff will come up that's really easy to, like journalists have covered the research, so you can just quickly, there's something in San Diego, something out of Georgia, that just speaks to how it disproportionately affects those folks that are already having a hard time with, the policing in their cities. It just makes it even harder. And the other thing I remember that a lot of people felt really uncomfortable about in one of these ordinances was that it kicks off once you hit a certain speed limit. So I think it was 70, and that really freaked a lot of people out because so you could get your license plate could be snapped if there's a speed limit sort of trigger. I don't know if that's in the current one, but that really kind of worried a lot of people that, if it's 70, there's a lot of people that would be, a lot of pictures that would be taken.
It's a no from me. It's a no. It's a no.
It's a what?
It's a no from me.
It's a hard no. Yeah, once you tell everybody, they're like, no, you don't get to get a picture of my license plate if I accidentally go above 70. Yeah, Ben.
I just wanted to add to E.D. Tucker's comments. And my concern is not only with how MNPD would use this, but when you read the legislation, it assumes that private entities do the right thing. And they're always accurate. And their technologies are always up to par. That is not always the case. The other thing is, in previous legislations we have looked at and the terms by which the data is stored, who owns the data, who circulates the data, who has the data, who has access to the data besides MNPD, because public-private entity means that Metro is not, or MNPD is not paying to store that data. And so this is what I'm concerned with. This was a concern that we began with, but I don't see it in this latest one. So I'd be curious to know what the rail guards are for that kind of data, how long it exists, who has access to it, who gets rid of it, who keeps it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because these entities, they're using our public streets and access ways to make money. Public-private entities are latching on to our public resources to make money, and it does not necessarily benefit the public, especially those who are the most vulnerable. So those questions, and to my fault, I have not been following this very closely because I've been busy, but these were the issues that we began with 2 or 3 years ago. And in the legislation, I don't see that detail that we discussed in this, because we always assume that these private entities are impervious to imperfection, to mistakes, but that is not. We know that is not the case in terms of security breaches of that data, who owns that data, who holds that data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring up to you that it's not only the MNPD, but it's also a question of the vague notion of private entities that is in this legislation that worries me.
If I could read just a bit of the council's analysis of the bill. This resolution authorizes the Metro government to enter into an agreement with private entities to acquire, share, or otherwise use surveillance technology, specifically license plate scanner technology, LPR, and to install surveillance technology onto or within the public right-of-way. Section 13-08-080 of the Metropolitan Code requires approval of the Metro Council by resolution adopted after a public hearing prior to installing surveillance technology onto or within the public right-of-way, or entering into an agreement with private entities to acquire, share, or otherwise use surveillance technology. The council shall grant approval of an action set forth in statute only, quotations, only upon the determination that the benefits of the residents, I read that to you earlier, it also says this resolution authorizes Metro government to enter into a contract with private entities to acquire, share, otherwise use surveillance data for license plate readers to install this technology onto within the public right-of-way. Attached to the resolution is the request for quotation for an automated license plate reader recognition system for the Metropolitan government. The intent of the FQ is to enter into agreements with one or more of the top scoring offerers of each proposed solution, such as fixed LPR, vehicle-based LPR, and trailer-based mobile LPR for use by the Metropolitan Police Department. Any use of LPR by any department of the Metro government is also governed under Section 13-08-080. This section contains requirements about the maintenance of an LPR system, including the purposes for which LPR may be used and the storage and retention of LPR data. So they have some of what you're saying, but again, it doesn't, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, it just doesn't appear to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
I mean, the question is can they share it with other precincts? I mean, with other jurisdictions as well. Belmead currently does this already, and I know that this came up in our discussion. I don't remember how it came out, but can you share? And that's where it gets really tricky, and it would need some serious, clean regulations and guidance over that, because then suddenly, my license plate is being handed over to another jurisdiction based on what and for whom. So what is the decision point here? Is it...
Well, I guess for me, the decision point would be if the commission wants to exercise its opinion on this, and that it will be discussed tomorrow, which would, I would say, require that you notify your individual councilman about where you are on this. I firmly believe that the passage of this 6-month will be just a arbitrary step toward full implementation, because they have to buy hardware now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense to buy hardware for a 6-month pilot if there's no intent for a full rollout of this technology.
Okay, so I guess does everyone feel like they understand? I mean, does everybody feel like they understand the negative consequences of the license plate readers? I'm saying everyone nod their heads. Okay, is this something we would want to just say the commission is against the license plate readers as is currently? Would be comfortable making a motion about that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So then, can I get a motion for the explicit statement of the commission against license plate readers for Nashville as it is currently being defined? Go for it.
I will motion for that.
A second?
Second.
Anyone against or abstain? All right, then the motion so moves. The MHRC declares no for the license plate readers in Nashville as it is being defined right now in the council. So you do have that public information. Okay, moving along. I know we're at TikTok. We quickly want to talk about Sandra Sepulveda, a council member, has brought an ordinance to council on adjusting how boards and commissions are appointed. This is as a result of just a lot of things that have come to light in the last couple of years, specifically our circumstance that we found ourselves in the summer. The mayor's office held a meeting to discuss this. Our executive director joined that meeting. I sent comments prior to that meeting, fully in support of Sepulveda's ordinance. The main things that I understood and are significant for us is that a portion of our membership would come from the community as opposed to from the mayor. That would be a difference. It would be some number. So the mayor's office would nominate, I think, something like 10, and there would be another number that would be nominated from community. So they would literally, individuals would just suggest individuals, and the council would vote on those. And it would space us out, which is our problem right now, whereby every 3 years a big chunk comes on, because right now a whole bunch of people came on all at the same time, so we're all going to roll off at the same time, and then you're going to have no continuity and a big gaping hole. So this tiers that as well. And then, Davey, anything else that you wanted to add on that?
The end part of your statement, all of those things could be handled through other processes other than this legislation. This legislation seeks to change. Right now, it has been the practice of Metro government that the mayor appoints and the council approves all appointments to boards and commissions. And this would single out 11 boards and commissions that are not bound by charter, if that is correct wording.
Right. The mayoral council approval is prescribed through ordinances in the code for these. Charter may specify and have to require a totally different process. And some of those are created, whether mayoral or otherwise appointed. But this is I didn't know the number.
Yes, it's 11 boards and commissions. The impact to us would be the mayor would appoint 10, and then the community, much in the way that members of the Community Oversight Board are selected, individuals or community organizations would submit names for the remaining 7. For the past 3 administrations, this one including, have all been advocates for diversity, equity, and inclusion. 2 things I know about that work, not the cottage industry that people get paid for to do the stuff that I have no idea what that is, but it is always disruptive. It is always disruptive. It seeks to disrupt the status quo. Secondly, it recenters power. So even sitting in the meeting with all the affected boards, it was a DEI meeting. I would hope that the mayor would support this legislation, as he's been a great advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And diversity is not only about race and ethnicity, it's also about ideology, philosophy, geography. Just a couple weeks ago, Southeast Nashville feels left out of Nashville. And so this would create a way that for the MHRC, that part of the representatives will always be folk out of the community that would have a sense of loyalty to those organizations and agencies that asked them to sit on this committee. I would strongly hope and support and ask that we would back this legislation in that this is not to say anything negative about this administration or any past administration. It's just that this would not make us dependent upon the benevolence of an administration, but rather the community would always have a voice and a seat that's been determined not by an administration, but by the citizenry of Nashville.
Does this add seats to commissions?
No.
Or it's just
No.
different assignments?
It just reassigns how the 17 seats are assigned. And it affects the various other boards in similar ways, but with different breakdowns. Some of the other boards are so particular that they have to have certain people with certain licensings or whatever anyway. Some of the boards require that a couple of the seats have council members on there. But these are the 11 boards and commissions that would be reordered in a way that the community would help post and seat those boards over against it being an administrative function. And for me, again, back to the whole DEI piece, you can't go any higher than this. And again, I would hope that the mayor, because he would have to give up power, and that's what happens when you do DEI work. And so again, I'm just hopeful that this is a piece of legislation that we can support.
I I sent in my comments. They were requested, and I sent in that I was fully supportive of it. And so if again, when you're talking to your council members, whoever, you want to note that, we can also do a motion in support of this if we feel confident about it. Yes, no?
I feel confident about it.
Dennis taking the lead on all the, okay. So the motion would, yes, go ahead.
Question, so these appointments, are there different criteria for the different commissions, such that the Human Relations Commission would have a certain criteria versus another?
Yes, based on size of the commission, based on the way in which they sought to break them down. And again, certain commissions require that they have, like the State Board of Health, I'm just pulling that out, and it's not one of these affected, but I think they have to have at least 2 MDs have to be board members. The Airport Authority, I mean, they require certain things. So as each board and commission already has its own general characteristics, it would alter those numbers to where that some of the appointments to those boards, and I don't know the particular breakdown of each one, would be made by the community.
And just scanning and looking, and I looked at this previously, but it was weeks ago. And when you say by the community, because it looks like some of the commissions, it's not just community, but community organizations.
Yes.
So then when you say community, I mean, how would that be? Just through community organizations, or what was your?
No. Individuals can also.
Gotcha.
It would basically be like an email address that you can send the person that you have in mind. That's how I understand it. It would be that open.
Well,
And then all people that were sent by email would be considered, or?
I believe so.
No, everything, the way in which your information was processed, those things stay the way they are. The interviews stay the way they are. It's just where do those names come from? And I use the COB because it would be very, very similar to it. The council has not indicated if more than, say it was 1 seat, but 3 people applied. They've not indicated what system they would use to do that. But they have a system when that happens with the COB, that they have this voting process that they use, but all the other stuff would remain the same. Does that kind of get at it, or?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm glad you pointed that out. So everyone did get this in their email, the actual ordinance, so you have it. Okay, so did we want to do a motion for the ordinance? It's a productive meeting today.
I would be happy to. I don't want to be recommendations now.
Okay, we've got a motion for MHAC to support the ordinance. I think it's BL 2022-1528. Can I get a second motion?
Second.
Anyone against or abstain? Great. Third motion of the meeting. So moved. So that is all of our new business. I don't know if you wanted to quickly go over the strategic planning. We are at time.
Yeah, well, I guess what I could say is I think we need to maybe potentially in January schedule another executive meeting. We have been working on the information that we could extract from the previous executive committee meetings, and we've been meeting as staff around developing the ongoing work we're doing and spaces for what we can take on in a way of coming up with what the strategic plan as we would ultimately present to you. And so, but we would need to meet again with the executive committee.
Yes, we had, I think, 2 or 3 meetings, and they were not conclusive at all. In fact, but they were great conversations. So I think we need to continue that. So we will do that. And then, any public comments? I don't see any. Any announcements? Yes.
Can I just emphasize again that all executive committee meetings are open to all council, to all commission members. So whenever you get the announcement, please join if you have time and would like to.
I have one comment.
Yes.
We have someone on our commission who played professional sport as well as a business owner, and I would love to make sure he's part of the discussion on East Bank because they'll give us some other insight into how we can address some of the issues that we're facing with this particular stadium.
Who is that commission member?
If I'm not mistaken. Not that I'm putting him on
I believe he's on your left.
Well, yeah, I would actually, if you could make it to the executive committee meeting. Not yet, but when we have it, that would be awesome for you to join. Okay, awesome. Yes, I think it's really helpful to hear from people that have a lot of context. It helps me a lot understand. So thank you for bringing that up. We'll get that date to you. Announcements, I just got to do this because I just got to do this as a second-generation Iranian. There have been, since September, when Mahsa Amini was killed by the Mouradi police in Iran, there have been protests at the federal building every week, every Saturday or Sunday. Since then, I'm there one-third of the time with my schedule. But if you see people in front of the federal building protesting, they are in the fight of their lives, of our centuries. We have been born and raised with this. It is profound what people are dying for in Iran right now, and so I just want to make a statement about that. And if you're driving by, just show some solidarity because this is not small. It's not just for a little change in law or a little change in behavior or a little regulation. It is a call for full out freedom, and that was something that was taken away 44 years ago. And they're going to go to the end, and it's been quite bloody and quite awful what they've done to children and women and men, young men in the country. So all the solidarity matters right now. And if you see posts or anything like that, please pay attention to what they're saying because there are petitions and different things like that being requested for the UN and others to do investigations. So that's my announcement. Anything else? Yes.
Yes, Friday at 5 p.m., the Tennessee International Human Rights Day celebration at the Church of Scientology on 8th Avenue South. We are co-sponsor of that event. Tickets are $10. Friday, 5 o'clock, Church of Scientology, Tennessee Human Rights Day.
And this is no affiliation with the Church of Scientology? It's just the venue?
Yes, it's just a venue.
Okay. Thanks. I had to make that clear. Okay, thank you for that. All right, thank you for an incredible meeting, you guys. I appreciate you showing up and deliberating some really important things. This meeting, I need a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any abstentions or no's? Fabulous. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Okay, I gotta run.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.